Hello, Packers fans. Welcome to the Green 19 podcast. The Green Bay Packers, as you know, just took a very tough 24-21 loss in Santa Clara, California against the San Francisco 49ers. They had that game. They had that game for most of the second half. And then, it's added to the list of tough postseason outcomes for the Green Bay Packers. My name is JR Radcliffe. I'm joined by Ryan Wood and Tom Silverstein. We're going to break that game down. There's a lot to discuss. There will be certainly more podcasts in our future where we can spend a lot of time on the off season. That'll be a little bit of this too. I'm sure you can't really talk about the end of the season without talking about what's next. But we'll be spending more time on that later. We will look back at this 49ers game primarily. And also a little bit, since we're recording this on Monday, a little bit later than normal, we did just hear from Packers head coach Matt LaFleur and some of the players. They had a little bit of postseason availability at Lambeau Field. So before we get to the game, Ryan, I'm going to start with you and start there. I don't know if we learned anything on Monday from what Matt LaFleur said or what the players said. Were there any last new revelations that we can bring to light here from what we learned on Monday?
Not really.
No.
Matt LaFleur did say that. Well, I guess the biggest news, Matt LaFleur is meeting with Joe Barry Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
And also Adam Stenavich and Rich Bisaccia gave no indication on Joe Barry's future. That's part of the process. Anyone that thought it was going to be a quick decision on Joe Barry and his future does not know how Matt LaFleur operates. So just get that out of the way. Matt LaFleur, going back to the game, he said that he felt like they outplayed him for large portions of that game. Just not the outcome that they wanted. And in some ways, it's remarkable. And what really stands out to me is just how different this day, this clean-out, locker room clean-out day, last day of officially of the 2023 season feels than a year ago. I mean, going into last offseason, gosh, it was nothing but uncertainty. Didn't know who the quarterback would be. Didn't know the next time they'd be back in this spot where they could contend and have a disappointing playoff loss. I mean, you would have known last year that they're going to get to the divisional round and lose to the 49ers. You'd sign up for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know. So it's a much brighter future that this team has now than it had a year ago. But in some ways, it's still another season-ending loss. And it's almost like they're right back to where they've been for a long time now, which is a franchise quarterback and gives you a chance to win against anyone, any round of the playoffs, any time, but also a playoff loss where they outplayed the opponent. I really thought at one point in the fourth quarter that the Packers were going to win that game. They had played that well, and they couldn't finish it. And that's not new for this franchise. And they're going to have to really dig into how to take that first step and how to be different in those moments with a new team. This is a different team, but it's the same result that they've had for a long time now. That's going to be a big part of this offseason.
Yeah, Tom, if we look at this game, I mean, it's very obviously no one thought the Packers were going to be in the divisional round, like Ryan said, up until a few weeks ago. It could not have been foreseen. So no matter what we say, there has to be a tinge of this was better than we expected. But they do. There were a lot of missed opportunities. I mean, really, it is kind of, I would imagine, frustrating for Packers fans that they came so close to winning that game, to being in Detroit, of all places, for the NFC Championship game. What do you really – you've had a couple days now to ruminate on this. What do you really think held this team back? Which opportunity really is glaring to you? You've got the drop pick 6 from Darnell Savage, the missed kick by Anders Carlson, 3 red zone opportunities right out of the gate, none of which ended in a touchdown. There were maybe some officiating things. The 49ers, though, were very good. Maybe it's just that the 49ers are good and you're not going to convert on all your opportunities. Maybe it was Jordan Love having finally his first maybe uneven game in a while. What really sticks out to you now that you've looked back on this game?
Well, I'm not sure there is one thing that sticks out. I think it was a case of 1,000 cuts. So there's just always in every game there's going to be plays that you lament, and I think they stood in there toe to toe with the 49ers, who are a very good team. And I think ultimately they just had too little in the most important moments. And San Francisco had a little too much in the most important moments. And so one team finished and the other team didn't. And there's all those things that happened in between that are part of NFL games. And, it was the same thing for Tampa versus Detroit. Tampa had the ball in its hands at the end of the game with a chance to tie, and they throw an interception. Same for the Packers. It's hard to win on the road. The thing, there's a reason why teams want the number one seed. You want to be rested. You want to be playing at home. The odds just kind of caught up with them. I do think it was a very winnable game, and I think there will be a lot of things you can look at that they blew, but I don't see anything institutional that went wrong. I think it was some players didn't make plays, and ultimately the team with better players usually wins, and the Packers have some weaknesses. They have weakness at safety. They could be a little bit better in their pass rush. They weren't deep enough, especially with Enikbari. They missed him. They could be better tackling. There's just certain positions they're going to have to get more dynamic at. And I think that was really the bottom line in the game, was the 49ers had a few more dynamic players.
Here's
I'll give you.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I'll give you something institutionally. Spoon, you hit on it a little bit with the safety, but the thought I had going down from the press box to the locker room after, I just mentally I went back to the spring, and the two gambles. Look, Brian Gutekunst had a phenomenal offseason. He won the Aaron Rodgers trade. He, as Matt LaFleur said today, hit the jackpot in this draft class. And he did all that in a week, right? Like that, he makes the trade and he hits a grand slam in the draft in a week. He had a phenomenal offseason. The fact that they even got this far, a lot of that is Brian Gutekunst. His future here is made. I mean, it's secure. But the two gambles that we saw right after the draft was, okay, they're closing the chapter on Mason Crosby, not just Aaron Rodgers, on Mason Crosby, and they're going with the rookie kicker. And they didn't draft a safety until the 7th round. And for a 7th-round pick, Anthony Johnson Jr., he made some plays this season, but it's not a significant investment at the position. He didn't make a significant investment there. And at the time, my thought was, well, you can't do everything. There was so much to do last offseason. You can't get every single stone unturned. This team's not a Super Bowl away from a starting safety. This team, if it's going to close the chapter on Mason Crosby and go with the rookie kicker, a rebuilding year is the year to do it. They're not a missed kick away from getting to the Super Bowl. That was my thought. I think it was a lot of people's thought. Turned out they very much might have been. They might have been a starting safety and an experienced veteran, reliable kicker away from actually making the Super Bowl this year. And it's a testament to just how far they overshot expectations this season. I'm sure if you ask Brian Gutekunst if they overshot expectations, he might say something to the effect of, this is the standard here. You always have these expectations. But actions and decisions speak louder than words. When you are making rebuilding moves, which is what they did this offseason, even in the season, trading Rasul Douglas for a 3rd-round pick, that's a rebuilding move. When you make those moves, you expect to rebuild. They overshot that by miles. And at the end of the day, the two things that they took a gamble on are the two things that ended their season.
Well, I would argue that they made a gamble, took a gamble on Carlson, knowing that there was going to be some issues with a rookie kicker, that it was going to be unpredictable. The other position, they addressed what at the time was the most important positions to them, which they had to get tight ends.
Yep.
They had to get wide receivers, and they have to continue to build their defensive line. Like those were the three biggest areas, and he addressed all three of those. The safety, he went and got Jonathan Owens, and it turned out to be a decent signing. He had Rudy Ford. That he just did not find an upgrade to what they had there. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes you try to go with what you got, and I'm not sure that there was anybody worth trading for that they could have found better at safety. I just, that one doesn't seem to be a gamble to me as much as it was, something due to the circumstances of how much they had to build on this team, how many open spots there were that they had to fill. And, and kicker was one of them too. And at some point, to me, that was the gamble was, can you go with a rookie? Is this the time to draft a rookie? And it probably was the time to draft a rookie because, as you said, the expectations weren't that great. So I don't know how much one position killed them. Definitely Darnell Savage was he's a lightning rod for sure. And they have to move on and they have to improve that position. Now that's a priority for next season.
Yeah, Savage. Go ahead.
I'm not ragging. I got a tweet after the game. You're ragging on Brian Gutekunst. I'm not ragging on Brian Gutekunst so much as I'm just speaking, as you said, to the reality of how massive this undertaking was, where he couldn't get everything done. And the way I've thought about it is, who would you rather have in the draft in the second round, Jaden Reed or Brian Brandt? You'd rather have Jaden Reed, right? Everyone agrees here. Jaden Reed had the statistically finest rookie season of any Packers receiver in franchise history.
But Brian Branch held on to his interception.
Brian Branch might have been very helpful Saturday night in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, but Brian Branch isn't a safety. He's a slot corner. They don't even play him at safety all that much, and that's how the Packers viewed him too, was as a slot corner. And so, maybe he would have been a decent safety right out of the box, but his strength is playing slot corner, and they had Keyshawn Nixon when Brian Branch came towards them. So I'm not sure that he would have made that much of a difference either.
The point is, these were decisions that Brian Gutekunst had to make, an either or. And to get to this point, he made the right decisions. He got this team to a level in one offseason that I don't think anyone expected. And a loss like this can be a good thing. We don't ever know if it is in the moment. It can be a good thing because it reveals where your roster deficiencies are and where you need to address next offseason to get to that next step. Safety's at the front of that line because drop pick 6, the touchdown to George Kittle where the 7th round safety that Anthony Johnson Jr. he doubles on the backside on the wrong receiver. Supposed to have deep help, and he doubles an underneath route. And Darnell Savage makes it way too easy for George Kittle. The 3rd down to George Kittle where Jonathan Owens misses open field tackle. George Kittle's really tough to tackle in the open field, but that was an explosive play. And then the literal next play, Darnell Savage misses a tackle on Christian McCaffrey and goes 39 yards. Time and time again, basically every explosive play that they didn't get Saturday night was a safety. So they know that now. They have to go get better at safety this offseason.
I don't want to pile on too heavily on Anders Carlson because he obviously got the brunt of this. He misses that 41-yard field goal. Granted, it was in the rain, but this is not unusual. 12 missed kicks over the past 12 games between extra points and field goals. That ends up being a really big deal, of course. Surprising, actually, that it hadn't burned them maybe to the high-profile degree before the divisional round of the playoffs, where the kick ends up allowing San Francisco to not just tie the game but take the lead, possibly making it a little more desperate for the Packers in the end. Jordan Love throws a game-clinching interception. I think, for me, kicker is a two-pronged decision. There's the decision to draft him and use draft capital at a time, like conventional wisdom, I think would tell you don't maybe need to do that. There's the best kickers in the league are Brandon Aubrey and Jake Elliott, who are either one guy was taken out of a very unconventional place, the other guy taken off somebody's practice squad. He was drafted, I believe. You got guys like Harrison Butker and Justin Tucker, Cairo Santos. These guys are all undrafted. So you can find kickers in unusual places. And maybe when you use a 5th-round pick, you're a little bit more hesitant to move on late in the season. I think maybe one decision informs the other because that's the second part of this. They could have brought somebody else in. They could have signed a veteran for the home stretch after they saw that Anders Carlson was struggling down the stretch, and they elected not to do that. Now, I understand wanting to keep confidence in a young player, and I guess that's what they're revisiting right now. Did they make a mistake in doing that? Because that kick obviously is a big marker in the game. Does this make sense to you, Ryan, or does it make sense to you that they stuck with him over the course of the final, 6 weeks of the season and didn't bring a veteran in to challenge him?
Yeah, that's where I think Spoon and I see it the same way. That was a gamble. When you have a rookie kicker on a team that this season stopped being a rebuild as soon as they beat Kansas City, right? They're 6-6, and now, playoffs. Okay. I don't know if even at that time, though, that they expected – this was a team that could have gotten to the Super Bowl this year. I don't know even after Kansas City if you had that feel for this group. Just get some meaningful postseason experience and reload for 2024. But when you do have a rookie kicker that misses a kick in 10 of 12 games, I said it as soon as Anders Carlson missed what should be an automatic 41-yard field goal. You always knew this was going to happen. This has been in writing for weeks, if not months now. You go back to the start of training camp, and you see the talent with Anders Carlson. You see why he was drafted, because he can kick the football a really long way. He can kick it longer than most humans can. But you also see the inconsistency in college bleed right into the NFL. He was an inconsistent college kicker. He was nothing but inconsistent this season. So, I think part of why they didn't bring a kicker in is because this team continued to surprise even them. But they're going to bring a kicker in this offseason. They're going to bring competition. You need to draft one, go draft one. And there's going to be competition at kicker this offseason.
Yeah.
I will say this about Carlson. He's a sixth round pick too.
Sorry, I said fifth round.
They had multiple picks in the 6th and 7th. And so, if you're going to take a flyer on a kicker, that's the time to do it when you got, 5 picks in the 5 or 6 picks in the last 2 rounds. The other thing is, look at the playoffs. I mean, they're killers for kickers. Tyler Bass has been, Buffalo's kicker, and he totally, missed on a very easy field goal in a critical game. Even Aubrey missed an extra point against the Packers in the wild card game. I'm not making an excuse for Carlson. They could see this coming, and everybody knew it was coming. But I also don't think, he lost them the game, because even if San Francisco scores, and then it goes to overtime, and the Packers still have to win in overtime. So it's not like he completely lost the game for them. I think, sometimes you do take risks in that regard with kickers. And the true test will be, does this guy become their kicker for 10 years? And, if he doesn't, then it's a bad pick. It's just a bad pick. And they will have paid for it with, a miss that maybe decided their season. Maybe it really didn't. I'm not sure. We can't predict that. In my view, they made the pick at the right time. And I can't see bringing in Mason Crosby at that point. Any guy you bring in off the street, there's a reason he's on the street. He can't kick off probably. He's probably really lousy at kicking off. He probably isn't very reliable at kickoff or at kicks, field goals right now. You probably have the same risk, with a guy off the street. So I don't know. Ultimately, I think he's going to be judged over the long term, just like Jordan Love is being, judged over the long term, and the circumstances where they missed. And, I don't know what else to say about it, but it's like I don't view it as this catastrophic thing, because it wasn't a game winner. It was, one to put the Packers up by 7.
Tom, I wanted to talk a little more about the defense. Certainly, Joe Barry is going to be one of the stories of the at least early part of the offseason until a decision is made there. This is a defense that played pretty well, I would say, in the most important games of the season. You could maybe argue when they had some backups on the field that they were pretty bad against Dallas, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to know what to make of garbage time against Dallas when they gave up a couple touchdowns. I think holding San Francisco to 24 points is pretty dang good. They had a hard time tackling McCaffrey. So does everybody else in the National Football League. So I don't really hold that against them. I guess I look at the defense and see just maybe a lack of playmakers outside of the pass rush. It isn't even just the safeties. The cornerbacks are guys that held it together, but outside of Jair Alexander, who has had injury troubles now the last couple of years, I don't know, do they have somebody who can really, make pop plays for you? The linebackers, I don't think Devondre Campbell's coming back. I don't know what Quay Walker, where his development is. It feels like maybe they're missing some guys back there, some dudes. I don't know if that's on Joe Barry. Maybe it is a scheme thing more than a personnel thing. But how do you look at this defense, and where are the areas? Obviously safety, but are there other areas that really need an upgrade before this team can call themselves Super Bowl contending?
I think first and foremost they have to figure out what they are. What kind of defense are they? What kind of defense are they going to be? They need to take stock of the talent they have right now and make that decision. They have enough young talent on the front 7 that they should know what kind of team they want to be. They know they have a shutdown corner who sometimes has trouble staying healthy, but they have 2 decent press corners, and they got a decent slot corner if they re-sign him. They should go in the season feeling like they have no safeties, and then, deal with it from there. I think they have enough talent up front to be a decent defense. I just don't know, how well everybody's been used, and whether there's more out there for the guys who have performed. Because, if you think about it, so they got probably as much as they could out of Kenny Clark. They got as much as they could out of Preston Smith.
Agreed, yeah.
They could have gotten more out of Rashawn Gary, but I don't know how much of that had to do with his knee. Mm-hmm. They could have gotten more out of Devontae Wyatt, probably. I think they could have got more out of Quay Walker. So I think part of what LaFleur's decision-making is going to be is, okay, who can make the most of the guys that I got? And is it Joe Barry, or is it going to be someone else? And they're gonna build. They'll probably take another edge rusher. They'll probably definitely take a safety. They'll probably take a corner. They got a lot of options. There's a lot of good edge rushers in the draft. Whatever they need someone who, whatever they draft, even if it's another edge rusher and they have 4 of them again or 5 of them, figure out how to use them. They need someone who's so flexible that they can make the very best players be their best. And I think they have enough to be competitive. They just need to keep filling holes, keep adding athletes. And that's what you do. That's what, San Francisco has done. They just keep adding athletes. And I think the Packers need more, and then they need someone who knows how to use them.
It sounds like you don't expect Joe Barry to be back, if I'm reading the room on that one.
If it were me, I would make a change. I would continue. I think he did a great job down the stretch. I have no idea what role Matt LaFleur played in the end. Mm-hmm. None of us know that. Was he the difference in why they started to play better? I know they got simpler, and almost to a player, they're like, yeah, they just kind of simplified, and it allowed us to just play free, and that was good. But if you really want to be a good defense, you got to be able to teach. You got to be able to be multiple. You can't just sit back in zones all the time, and you can't just be simple all the time. You have to have the ability to use your guys in different ways. And so, yeah, I would try to find somebody who has a little broader spectrum, than Joe Barry does.
I think that Joe Barry made this by the end a tougher decision than what it seemed about 6 weeks ago, because it was a no-brainer after Baker Mayfield, perfect passer rating, Bryce Young looks like an actual competent rookie quarterback. It was obvious at that point. And then they recovered. I'm with you, Spin. I don't know. They recovered right when Matt LaFleur said that he was going to take a bigger role in the defense. So we don't know inside how much that played a part in it, but they did recover. They gave up 19 combined points to the Bears and Vikings to secure a playoff spot. They gave up 16 points for the competitive portion of the wild card game. And even this last game, the defense played pretty well. Every explosive play was because of a safety. They don't have safeties. We've known that since the spring. They still held the 49ers to 5 points less than their season average. And that's a really good 49ers team. They're third in the league in scoring this year. They played well down the stretch, but when I think about it, the one word that resonates with me that they don't have, and they're going to have in 2024 when the expectations are entirely different, is consistency. It's not enough in this league when you're a contender to have it some weeks and not have it others, to have it some stretches and not have it others. Because absolutely, this Packers defense had really good defense for stretches. And then every once in a while, they would just look incompetent. That can't happen. They were thoroughly inconsistent. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know how you fix that, but that's what they have to fix. They have to be able to be a unit that shows up every week and not just sometimes. And they're a sometimes unit right now. And sometimes it looks really good. Sometimes it's not near good enough. That's what has to get fixed. So for me, it's 3 years now with Joe Barry. At the end of 3 years, they're still inconsistent. That's not good enough when you're a contending team, which they're going to be in 2024.
I try not to blame guys in the secondary for dropping passes thrown right to them. It's not their instinct to be looking to catch a football necessarily. They're there to cause interference. But I just keep seeing in my mind's eye the Darnell Savage play, because if he takes that back, it's not even just the points. You can't use McCaffrey that much anymore. Brock Purdy was not good in this game. The rain thing with him seems to be a very real thing. He was really off target all game long. One of the big reasons the Packers were in this game. So if he's got to be the guy to make plays down the field, man, the Packers absolutely win that football game. I know that's the first half, but I just, what if Darnell Savage returns that kick?
If that's for those reasons, they're DBs for a reason because of the hands, right? Mm-hmm. If that's understandable, missing a tackle with two arms around Christian McCaffrey in the box is not. Like you gotta make that tackle if you're safety. And I understand Packers drafted Darnell Savage to not be a thumper. They knew that coming in. He played a lot of nickel in college. And when he does catch it, as he did in Dallas, he's gone. He's maybe the best athlete they have in their secondary. That's his role, right? But if you play the safety position in the NFL, you have to make the easy tackles, because if you don't, that's when seasons end. So if dropping a pick six, why they're a DB. If that's understandable, missing that tackle, you got to make the tackle.
Yeah. Well, and I still think even the Kittle play, that one bothers me. I keep looking at that play, and you made the comment that Anthony Johnson bid on the Brandon Ayuk slant route, but if you look at that was a 3rd and 5, and it was a blitz. It's a 6-man blitz. Those guys are supposed to get there. If you look at the blitz, it was just terrible. Quay Walker tripped over somebody. Devontae Wyatt was on the ground. It was pathetic, and they let Purdy get outside. If Purdy throws that to Ayuk, Anthony Johnson probably picks it off and returns it. Okay, let's say he's supposed to stay back on that one, but he didn't. Darnell Savage still has that guy man-to-man, still has George Kittle man-to-man, and he's a 4-3 guy, and he played it tentatively. It's like he looked up, saw Anthony Johnson wasn't there, and was like, oh, instead of like, oh, all right, I'm going to go get this ball. I'm going to go tackle George Kittle before he gets in the end zone or do whatever it takes. And that's kind of been Darnell Savage's history, is that, when there's a play to be made, he's a second late or a half second late or just a little hesitant. And that's the kind of play where you got to have someone who, if a mistake is made, I don't know if Anthony Johnson was supposed to be there or not, but even if he isn't, then go and make a play, help your guy out. And, they all turn around and look like, what the hell happened? Well, what happened was, you could have possibly done something about it, and no one did. So, those 3 plays were just killers. And I mean, we can point to other plays. There were other missed tackles, and it's not just on Darnell Savage. But you're in a divisional playoff round, and you got a first-round pick back there. That's the guy who's got to be making those plays.
Yeah, the way he played it was he was expecting the help over the top, right? But underneath coverage still is coverage. Like, you still have to make it competitive. Even if you're underneath and you're expecting that deep help, he didn't make it competitive on that play. So I'm completely with you, Spoon.
Speaking of another first-round pick, we have to talk, obviously, about Jordan Love. And I don't think, against the 49ers defense, I don't think it's even a terrible stat line. 21 of 34, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. One is in the desperation of the moment at the end. It was not a good pass. The Packers still had a chance to tie or win that game with under a minute to go, and he forced one, unquestionably a bad throw. Dre Greenlaw gets his second pick of the game. He's been really good at protecting the football down the stretch, and I know he had a fumble against Chicago, but I think, 1 interception in the last 8 games or something. I mean, just really tremendous on that front. And I thought he looked pretty poised in the rain against one of the best defenses in football in the divisional round. I think it's an okay showing from him, but obviously it wasn't his best game. Tom, I know you wrote a little bit about it. We saw him maybe revert to some bad habits, but for the most part, I think it was okay. Give me your impression of Jordan Love and maybe even a little bit about where they go from here. There's a contract to discuss. There's, what comes next for him, and obviously there'll be more to discuss on that later. But give me a sense of what you're thinking about Jordan Love after this game.
Jordan Love's season ended not too undifferently than Aaron Rodgers did in 2009. Aaron Rodgers had them in overtime. They had the ball, and he didn't recognize a slot blitz. And the next thing you know, he's kicking the ball up in the air, and the guy returns it for a touchdown, and the game's over. He kind of choked for whatever it was worth, and so did Jordan Love in the end. That's where your very best quarterbacks shine, is in those moments, and he should have thrown that ball away, and he will regret that pass for the rest of his life. But if he learns from it, then all the better. If that's what it takes, the next year Aaron Rodgers was lights out from the beginning, and if Jordan Love takes that next step that Rodgers did from 9 to 10, then and learns from that particular pass, then all the better for him. I think he was under a lot of pressure. He hadn't been in that situation before. Boy, it would have meant something if he would have thrown it away and they had gone down and scored and won the game. Would have really said something about him. But, now there's more for him to build on. He had a great year. I don't think anybody can take that away from him. I don't think he was outclassed or in over his head against the 49ers. They have a great pass rush. They have great corners, or have one really great corner, and they threw a lot of stuff at him, and he performed pretty well. I just think, now it's okay. You've taken them this point. Now you've set the standard. All right. Now it's time to take it up another notch next year, and we'll see how they do that. I do believe he'll sign a new contract. It's going to be a mega deal. I don't know that he'll be the highest paid, but he's going to set their salary cap back for several years ahead and put them back in that situation. But yeah, he's going to get a big deal, and then that's a whole nother thing he's got to deal with, because then the pressure really comes. You're the $30 million quarterback, and if you throw in interceptions like that, then the criticism is really coming out, and you have to deal with that.
Ryan, we were talking about Jordan Love's place in the NFC among the best quarterbacks in the NFC, and discussing that there is definitely an argument he is going to be the best guy in the NFC next year. I mean, it seems crazy to say that out loud. I mean, that Jalen Hurts maybe could take a step back forward after he really struggled in the second half of the year. We're still just evaluating Jordan Love over 9-10 games, but as you pointed out last week, it's still his first season, and for him to be doing this is special, is outside the ordinary, and I would imagine you would say sustainable. And unless Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins, one of the veterans, unless they still have a claim to that spot, it might be Love's conference, right? That's wild to me.
Yeah, that's the thought I had leaving the stadium Saturday night. I do believe that he's going to be the best quarterback in the NFC this next season. There's a bevy of quarterbacks in the AFC that'll be ahead of him.
Sure.
A lot of quarterbacks in that conference. You add C.J. Stroud to that list, right? But in the NFC, I think he's going to be the best quarterback. I was very curious to see Brock Purdy play. He's a much more talented quarterback than Brock Purdy. The arm talent, the mobility, he's just more talented. You look at anyone in this division, Jordan Love's, he's a more talented quarterback. Look at Jalen Hurts, right? Maybe Jalen Hurts, but right now, you talk about two quarterbacks going in opposite directions. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that Jalen Hurts can respond and rebound next year. It's certainly possible. He's certainly talented. But right now, they're going in different directions. So that's where the Packers are. They're going into this offseason believing that they will have the best quarterback in the NFC next season. Now build around him. It means adding more playmakers. It means adding protection. It means getting safety right and fixing this defense. But they're starting from a heck of a place.
Yeah. Tom, how do you feel about how this game was managed at the end? The Packers had 3 timeouts for that last minute, for that last drive. I don't think they ended up using all 3 because of the interception, but I know there was some thought once the 49ers got so close to a touchdown, I think they took over with about 6 minutes to go, ended up driving for the game-winning touchdown, scored with minute 6, I believe, was still on the clock when McCaffrey got in the end zone. I suppose the Packers could have used a timeout there to either, slow down the momentum or ultimately give themselves possibly more time. I mean, you make a stop, you win the game. So I don't know if you care about the clock at all at that point. Just make the stops and win the game. But there was that aspect, and there are other little things, that some of the officiating, like the 4th and 1 early in the game where they didn't get a spot on consecutive short yardage situations. The ruling that Purdy was in the pocket on what looked like a pretty obvious intentional grounding call. There were other little bad luck things, but I wonder how you think at the end of this game if they managed it correctly, or if there's something else they maybe could have done to give themselves a greater opportunity at the end.
At the time, I thought that LaFleur could have used timeouts. I was wondering why he wasn't using timeouts. But ultimately, they had 3 timeouts, and I guess it was over a minute, right?
Yeah, minute 6, I think. That's enough. That's enough time.
They had plenty of time. And they were moving the ball. They got 2 first downs. Is that correct on that drive?
I don't remember for sure.
One. They got it. I think they
last
one.
drive of the game.
Just one?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I thought they were in good position. A couple of things that I thought were questionable was, one, why, at the 6-yard line, aren't you doing everything you can to stop Christian McCaffrey and say, hey, if you want to throw the ball for a touchdown, go right ahead, stop the clock. whatever. Line up with your base defense or your goal line defense or whatever, and don't let Christian McCaffrey run for a 6-yard touchdown. Stop him. They don't have Deebo Samuel. They got, you got to trust your secondary in that case. I just am not going to let Christian McCaffrey beat me down there. And that's what they did. They played that cruddy nickel defense that they do down there and left it wide open for him to run right through them. So to me, that was a problem. I thought they were positioned okay. They probably could have used Aaron Jones more. I think they could have run the ball a few times more. But even if Jordan Love throws that ball away, I still think they got a chance. I think they have a chance to at least tie it. I didn't think the game was over.
Yeah, and remember, that's first down. That's 1st and 10. So it wasn't like it was 3rd and long and it puts you, or 4th or 3rd or 4th and long. It was first down.
I mean, I'm doing whatever I can to get the ball in Aaron Jones's hands. And I asked LaFleur about it today, about did he think he had stuff left on his play sheet that would work? And he was pretty confident that he did. He felt pretty good about the drive. And the one play took it away, and we'll never know.
Yeah.
Spoon, I don't know how you felt in the moment. But just speaking for me, when the 49ers were making that drive at the end, it wasn't a question of if they were going to score, it was win.
Yeah.
And what you want from a contending team is a defense that you present some question here, right? That maybe they can end the game right here. But there was never that question in my head. It was, when are they going to score? Is there going to be enough time left? And when Christian McCaffrey finally did, you look at the clock, okay, there's still 67 seconds left. Maybe they do have enough time. But that was my thought process the entire time, was how much time is going to be left when they score here? And I think that if anyone's seen this defense time and time again, you probably felt similarly. What they need to get to this offseason is a defense that there is some doubt. Like, hey, they might actually make this stop here and in the game, win the game right here, because they had a 4-point lead. They needed the touchdown. But there wasn't any doubt. It was, they're going to get the touchdown. How long? How long are they going to have left? That's
at any point, did you think they would do what Steve Spagnuolo did in the last drive, when Buffalo has the ball, or Todd Bowles would do, which is, bring some kind of exotic blitz that would cause Brock Purdy to, make a bad decision, or something that caused what Jordan Love did to make a bad decision? Did you think that would happen at all? No. I didn't. No. I figured, they're going to play some umbrella defense and they're going to dink and dunk the ball down the field, and we'll see what happens when they get in the red zone. And then when they got in the red zone, they blew it. Yeah. So, that's the part. I agree with you. I thought the same thing. I thought, okay, how much time is going to be left when they score?
Yeah.
And that's probably the answer on what they need to do. That's probably the answer right there. Because if you don't have that belief in that moment, and this is going to be a contending Packers team in 2024, they are right back where they were. They're a short-list Super Bowl contender in the NFC. You got to – that's the answer.
Yeah. The person next to me said the same thing. They're going to go 6 minutes. They're going to score and win this game right before the buzzer. And that's what I thought, too. I didn't think there'd be a minute left. I didn't think there'd be any time left. But I will say this, to give the defense their due, both touchdowns came from 30 yards out. Those were not sustained drives that led to red zone opportunities. Their field goals from 52 yards. The defense had held up their end of their bargain. And that's also where I think the Enagbari injury comes into play, because now you've got guys like Preston Smith who've been on the field and are worn down by the end of the game. You're not going to be able to see the same level of pressure in the fourth quarter that you were seeing earlier in the game. So I agree with you guys, though, that all signs still are pointing toward a change in philosophy, and that might mean a new, presumably.
I agree that Enagbari, that was a killer, because, you could see Preston Smith was exhausted at the end, and, on Purdy's scramble, he just stopped because he was just out of breath. And I think they just ran out of guys. But again, that's okay, then you got to find some creative way to produce that same sort of pressure. And they never could. And, we have to give Brandon Ayuk credit. That catch he had
For
across
sure.
the middle, that coverage was perfect. And he made just an unbelievable catch. But still, I still, the McCaffrey run just blows me away because I'm just, if I'm them, I'm just doing whatever I can to stop him and make Brock Purdy throw the ball.
Yeah.
You're stopping the clock if he has to throw the ball.
And he's inaccurate. He was inaccurate all day long. You can't even guarantee that the throw to Ayuk was very good. And he had some great throws. But a couple shout outs. I don't want to forget about Aaron Jones. He had 100 yards. Once again, what a finish to his season with an 18 carry, 108-yard performance. That 53-yard run, when he had that's on the drive where Carlson misses the field goal. I got to say, after that run, it's like, well, the Packers are definitely winning this game. I really believed it at that point. You had Eric Wilson recovering Keyshawn Nixon's 72-yard kickoff return and fumble, a diving play by the veteran special teamer. Got to make mention of that. That kept preserved what ultimately became a touchdown drive, Tucker Kraft's touchdown. Emmanuel Wilson hurdled a guy. Speaking of E. Wilson, what a play for Emmanuel Wilson, 16 yards rushing. Not bad, but again, a lot of guys getting opportunities on offense. They spread the ball around. Jordan Love has done that all year. You had two guys with 4 catches, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, and nobody with more than that. So it wasn't about feeding one guy. They were able to spread the offense around quite a bit. Like I said, there will be lots more storylines to discuss in terms of what comes next, the future, guys that they're going to keep, guys that they might move on from. But I want to give you guys just any last thoughts here about this game or where they stand. Maybe it is one burning offseason question you have. And I'll start with Ryan as we stand here, January 22nd. What's the big thing you still want to know, or what's the big thing you still want to point out?
Well, they're keeping Aaron Jones.
I would assume so.
And yes, his cap hit might be prohibitive, but took a $5 million pay cut last year. He made it very clear he wants to come back. He presented him the same offer this year. Who's saying no? Packers absolutely want to take that. Aaron Jones is going to take that. He just had his best 5-game stretch of his entire career at age 29. And with these guys, it can go fast when it goes at the running back position, but there's no indication that he's lost a step at all. So he's going to be back. I think what they need to do, and we've talked about this, I was watching the Lions-Bucks game at the Denver airport on Sunday and thinking, boy, if this Packers offense went out and got a Jahmyr Gibbs and added that with Aaron Jones this offseason, watch out. I think offensively, their skill set from receiver, tight end, really good place. I know Spoon said before, if there's a guy, go get him. Sure, but they don't need to. If there's a guy, go ahead and get him. Keep adding. That's fine. They don't need to. They're in a good place. Shore up left tackle, the offensive line protection in general, and I know that Rasheed Walker had a good season, but, you can have some depth there. But if they get a Jahmyr Gibbs and they add him to Aaron Jones and really make sure you protect Aaron Jones in his age 30 season, this offense next season, watch out. It could be very good. And it's just, I'll go back to where I started. This is a very different offseason coming up for this team. In 1 year, they became instant contenders. They put themselves right back where the Green Bay Packers are used to seeing themselves. And juxtapose that to a year ago when everything was up in the air. It's remarkable what Brian Gutekunst did, this coaching staff, this quarterback, and they should be good for a very, very long time, but they know what they have to those few things. It's not like last year's list where they had to do everything in the world. It was a massive, massive overhaul. There's a few things they need to do, and if they take care of those this offseason, they will be a favorite to appear in the Super Bowl in 2024.
Yeah, and you don't have to use a first-round pick on Jahmyr Gibbs. Look where they got Aaron Jones. Those guys are out there. If you can,
you don't have to, but
it helps.
But if there's a running back that they love in the first round, I don't think that's a bad pick.
Yeah. I don't see that happening.
That would
maybe
be this offense. You don't have to, but that's not a bad pick if they do that in the first round.
Yeah. All right, Tom. What about you? What's your final thought here?
Just to comment on that, yeah, I almost see it as either way, if they could get a Jameer Gibbs, that'd be great. But if they could get a David Montgomery, a guy, and then let Aaron Jones become the Jamar Gibbs, where he only has to play, 10, 15 snaps a game, and then save him for the stretch, where he becomes the guy. You slowly transition towards the end of the year for him to be the guy. Do that, and find some guys who can function in your run game. But whatever you do, keep him, like I said, keep him in tinfoil until the playoffs. It's worth it. Even if he's a $17 million cap hit, he practically took you to the NFC Championship game. He was the difference in the way their offense ran. So that's what I would say about that. I wouldn't. The one thing they're going to have to do is understand that next year will be tougher. Teams will take them seriously now. Teams will study Jordan Love. They'll look at those wide receivers. You're going to have some guys who naturally are going to start to think that, their stuff doesn't stink and that, their heads are going to get big and they're going to want to get paid. And that's just natural. All the kind of stuff that Matt LaFleur is going to have to manage. These are the best years for a head coach when you have no pressure on you and guys perform and you have a rookie class that's just kicking butt. Hopefully he enjoyed that year because it's going to be tougher. It's going to be tougher for him. It's going to be tougher for Jordan Love. And but they can go into next season saying they stood toe to toe with probably the best team in the NFC, and they're not that far away.
And obliterated the number 2 team. I mean, I don't know if we say the Cowboys are for sure the number 2 team, but they were the 2 seed and obliterated them at their place. I mean, this was just a tremendous finish to the season.
And would anybody have doubted whether they could win against Detroit? I think they would have had a shot.
Mm-hmm.
I would have picked the Packers this week.
I would have picked Detroit if only because for once now people will think it's 50-50. No one thought they'd beat Dallas. No one thought they'd beat San Francisco. But they get into Detroit, it's like, oh, well, the Packers have already done that. So now it's a 50-50 thing, and then I would expect Detroit to rise to that occasion. But what wasn't meant to be. Instead, it's Detroit going to Santa Clara. The Packers season comes to an end. Appreciate you listening to the Green 19 podcast. Like I said, we'll do this again. We'll look ahead to the offseason questions probably about this time next week. And if news allows, if there's some breaking something or other, personnel change or something, we'll come at you a little bit sooner. So you're stuck with me for a little bit longer. I am, again, JR Radcliffe. He's Ryan Wood. He's Tom Silverstein. Thanks for tuning into the Green 19 podcast. We'll be back with you again shortly. Bye-bye.